Hello beautiful people, this video is part of the series around strategy and implementation, and particularly talking around the execution layer and executional intelligence. And this one focuses on why does strategy implementation often require changes within an organization. Hi, I'm Jennifer Kenny. I'm the best-selling author of The Innovation Mindset and award-winning author of 100% Capacity. I work with teams in complex technical and scientific environments to help them be able to see, understand, implement, manage, and work within the execution layer of their projects and their strategies. So imagine that you've launched a strategic initiative and your teams are stuck. Your execution is lagging. The likes and don't likes around the strategy form into different silos and your frustration is mounting. What do you do when that begins to happen in the middle of beginning to execute a strategy? In this episode, we're going to talk about why strategy implementation almost always requires internal change and how to prepare your organization to succeed, not resist, when the execution begins. Strategy implementation requires a different kind of operating model than ones that we might have had before. Strategic vision sets a direction, but the implementation requires infrastructure change. So many times our direction will lead us towards different products, different markets, different customers who we're going to be engaging with. And as a result, we need different roles and responsibilities, different levels and types of cross-functional coordination. And sometimes we're also refining and changing our success metrics. So when a strategy gets rolled out, we're often do org changes. Now, the problem with that is that what we're doing, I often think about it as moving the chairs on the Titanic. And the reason for that is the way that we currently see how work gets done inside our organizations lives in the visible layer of what we see and what we manage. And we manage the org charts, we manage the organizational structure, we manage the career trajectories, we manage the meetings, we manage the projects, we all have Slack channels for communicating with each other, or Microsoft Teams channels for communicating with each other. So we're doing all of this visible stuff that lives in the org charts, the emails, the structures around us, the project plans. But what we're doing is we're trying to manage the bottom part of the iceberg. So think about the top 10% as being what we see and what we manage and what we have tools to manage and see today. And the bottom part, the 90%, being the execution layer that we don't necessarily have an understanding or visibility into. And that is the real how work gets done. So let me give you an example. You more than likely have someone in your organization who's your go-to person who works in a different department. They might be in finance, it might be in ops, it might be in customer service, it might be in IT. And you go to them to get stuff done when you hit a wall and you can't take care of yourself inside the org for whatever reason, or you need a favor, you need a new report, you need something done differently. That layer of execution, the how stuff gets done, now multiply that by the number of people in your organization. Think about the number of times that you do that in a year. Think about the number of times you do it in a month. And you're looking at hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of requests, special favors, coordination loops happening right across your entire org. We don't really have visibility into that. We don't really have a way of understanding that and understanding how it happens. And we haven't been educated or trained how to see the structures of that unfold in front of us. When I talk about the execution layer, I'm talking about that layer, and I'm also talking about executional intelligence, which is the ability to be able to observe that, to recognize it happening around you, to recognize the value and the importance of it, to leverage the value of and importance of it, to use that in your day-to-day with other human beings, where you're doing what I refer to as the conversational loops that allow you to actually be able to get real work done. So execution breakdowns, when we look at strategy execution, project execution, those breakdowns are structural. They're not necessarily personal. So lots of times we hang the messenger, we blame people for execution failures. And what we're doing is we're missing the point, we're missing an understanding of what execution really is and where and how and why it breaks down. Breakdowns in execution come from vague ownership. They come from no clear definition of done, or what I refer to as conditions of satisfaction or conditions for success, and unspoken commitments. They don't necessarily come from bad intentions. We imply bad intentions on others or on other departments because of a lack of trust, because we are trying to operate inside a system that we don't really understand or have visibility into. And when it breaks down, we don't understand why it's broken down. We just know it's broken and we're looking for someone to blame. If we don't shift how we think about customers and performers, how we think about human beings actually making promises to each other, which we all do every single day, and how we figure out how to repair when the conversations are broken, what we're doing is we are working in an execution layer that we don't have any understanding or visibility into. One of the things that I've seen consistently within organizations is people look to drive accountability. So when a project isn't working, some genius will pipe up with saying, we need more accountability. And they look to drive accountability by making sure that all the tasks are properly defined and that people know what tasks they've been assigned. And one of the things that I found with that is, whereas it's laudable in terms of the hope for a good outcome, what it really does is it puts people in a position where they feel like they are being micromanaged, that someone's breathing down their neck, like they are being controlled. What happens in there is we're missing the point that people come into work to actually deliver value for each other. When I, years ago, used to run big working sessions inside companies, I would start off by asking them, so who got upset at work today? Who got pissed off at work today? And a lot of people, pretty much all the room, would put their hands up. And then I would say, okay, so where do we think that's coming from? And everybody would look at each other and they'd look at me quizzically and I'd go, okay, well then that means someone must be doing that on purpose. Who came into work today to piss everyone else off? And the whole room would erupt in laughter, because we don't come to work to do that to each other. We come to work to deliver value for each other, to coordinate with each other, to build trust with each other, to have a bit of a laugh, to do some fun, to add some value. And so if we don't understand that coordination breakdowns destroy trust, that if we're not designing our execution layer, we're working in a broken system where trust gets eroded continuously. We're working in an environment where we are annoying and creating friction and tension for each other without ever intending to. So let me give you an example of a real case study that one of the clients that I worked for. And this was a real case where execution required a significant structural shift. So it was a billion-dollar equipment manufacturer, and they were struggling with silos, with fragmented metrics, and with no coordination structure and no visibility into that execution layer. And what happened was we worked with them in the execution layer. We started doing design work with them in there. And much more importantly, we taught their people how to have executional intelligence, how to be able to make real promises, how to be able to identify customers, how to be able to provide context, how to be able to listen deeply to what the customer cared about, and how to design the conditions for success of whatever work it was that you were doing with the customer, not something that got lobbed over the wall to you. How to be able to build trust, how to be able to deal with breakdowns when they happen, mistakes when they got made, and recover from those with enormous speed. And so what happened was once we put that in place, both the design of an execution layer and an executional architecture, and the learning for the people to build executional intelligence to work inside the system, what we saw was we had a 66% improvement in turnaround, we had a 12.5% reduction or budget savings, and we were also able to move from trust ratings with the customer from marginal to highly effective. So this wasn't about planning, it was much more about learned capacity within the organization and the architecture to be able to support that new capacity that we had brought into the org and onboarded. So when we think about change and we think about organizational change and we think about organizational structural change, the thing to remember is that it isn't really about trying to change the org so we can change the culture, so the culture will be able to help us be more effective. What it is really about is it's about how do we build an understanding of how execution really works? How do we create and design and understand an execution layer? How do we build executional intelligence into the system? And so I would say that when change isn't really about trying to shape the culture, sometimes it is, but it's really a matter of the conversations that we have that are new and different, and those will change the culture and change the structure and the effectiveness of the organization, I believe, a lot faster than some of the other things that we tend to do. So if you think about the visible layer, which are the org charts, the KPIs, and the execution layer, which is the promises and the coordination and the trust, those two things need to absolutely work in concert. If we are looking for one to do the work of the other, we are going to be unsuccessful and we're going to produce breakdowns all around us. But if we look at the two working in concert, we can be incredibly successful. So to implement a strategy, just to recap, you need new conversations, new agreements, and new repair protocols. That's the sort of change that produces a ripple effect, an enormous ripple effect, positive ripple effect across an organization. As you start educating yourself on the execution layer and you start building your own executional intelligence, I strongly recommend that you have a look at the first video that I did in this series. This is one in a series of 20 videos. And the first one is called What is Executional Intelligence? That gives you an overview of the concept and hopefully helps you learn and begin to apply it for yourself in a way that is valuable for you. As you do this, if this is interesting for you, if this is valuable for you, let me know, make a comment down below, engage with me, and let me know what I can do to help and support you. As you go forward and increase your executional intelligence, I wish you the very best of luck and success. Take care.